And we are live. Welcome to today's episode of MicroConf on Air. As always, I'm your host, Rob Walling, and I'm waiting for my theme music to kick in here. Producer Xander is frantically looking for the button, the insert music. Every Wednesday, we live stream for 30 minutes, and we cover topics related to building and growing ambitious startups that don't require us to work 80-hour weeks, raise millions in venture capital, or drive us to the brink of burnout. And we seek things like freedom, purpose, and relationships. And we want to maintain those values while building interesting companies that can have an impact maybe on the world or maybe just our little corner of it. So welcome again on this Wednesday afternoon. A couple housekeeping items as we kick off. One, if you haven't checked out the MicroConf On Air podcast, we're doing a lot of stuff there. One, every Thursday morning, these episodes air, just the audio feed, in case you want to catch it asynchronously or you miss any of the live streams. And two, we are doing what's called MicroConf Refresh, where every Tuesday morning, we're airing a past MicroConf talk, basically the top-rated talks of all time. We have 190-something talks from 19 events over almost 10 years, and we're handpicking the best-rated from each year. We started with the top 5 of all time from folks like Joanna Wiebe and Jason Cohen and Patty O'Levin and Sherry Walling, and I have one in there too. And I think mine maybe goes live next week, but then we'll be keeping it rolling. So we've gotten a lot of good feedback about that. Folks who say, I can't sit down and watch 100 videos. I can't sit down and watch one video, but it's great to have a podcast feed and you kind of spoon feed it to me every Tuesday morning. It gives me an excuse and kind of, it's a little bit of a forcing function too. It's in the queue and I'm going to learn about copywriting this week from, Joanna Wiebe, or how to stay sane while starting up from Sherry Walling. So that's the MicroConf On Air podcast. And you can find that in any podcatcher that you used. If you haven't already, head to youtube.com/microconf and hit that subscribe button. That will notify you when we are going live every Wednesday. We've also done some other live events over the past several months as COVID became more of a thing. And we will be publishing new videos, as we have in-person events and do other live streams. Thanks, as always, to Basecamp and Stripe. They are our headline partners for the year, and they make everything we do just a little bit easier. So we want to thank them for being on board with MicroConf in 2020, and look forward to connecting with y'all at the next in-person event that we are able to hold. My guest today probably needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyways. Mr. Rand Fishkin is the co-founder of Moz and now SparkToro. He is a MicroConf speaker who was slated for our Minneapolis event, and last April, well, we obviously have had to postpone that, but I do expect and hope to see him on a main stage at a future MicroConf as soon as we're able to get those rolling again. He's also the author of Lost and Founder, a book which I think you'll be able to see in his behind him on his bookshelf once he appears here, but highly, highly recommended. I've listened to it multiple times. It's just a great tale of his story of raising venture capital and just how skewed and perhaps how challenging that whole ecosystem is, and how it can lead to the wrong motivations when you want to build a great 5, 10, 20, 30, $40 million software company and venture capital doesn't necessarily support that. So it's a great story. He's also, I'm an investor in SparkToro. He's an investor in Tiny Seed. And this is only the second time I think that Rand and I realized he and I have really never spoken one-on-one. So it was great to chat with him beforehand. So Mr. Rand Fishkin, I'd love to welcome him to the show. How you doing, sir?
Great, Rob. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We already have listener questions pouring in. So
Oh,
this is
wow.
what happens. Yeah, is when we get someone, if people know your background and they know your story, they know the questions that they want to hear you talk about. And so
Sure.
we may have more than we can fit into 30 minutes, but we'll do our best. So
We'll have to go lightning round, 2-word answers.
Exactly. So I want to kick us off and set the stage a little bit. You mentioned that, obviously you're known as a brilliant online marketer, not just SEO, but content marketing and just all the things to get people to be interested in what you're up to. And I wanted to kind of kick it off with what are the top few online marketing opportunities that you are seeing today?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm actually trying to prepare a blog post on where folks can go with their advertising dollars during the Facebook boycott. And also looking at this long-term trend of fewer and fewer people clicking on Google search results, right? The rise of the zero-click search, which I've been writing about the last few years. And so it's been interesting to see that the duopoly that sort of controls online marketing and online advertising, Google and Facebook, are becoming more and more challenging to participate in and less of an opportunity. And so this, I think this is pushing a lot of marketers to think about where can I do other things. And the biggest problem that I see, to be honest, Rob, is that so many folks assume or believe that they have to be able to get low friction, programmatic, high reach for their dollars and very low effort for their dollars in marketing, right? I think in software businesses, especially with SaaS, we don't want to be thinking, oh, how do I reach out to 10 new sources of influence of my customers each week? Like, I don't want to do that work. I want to just pay Facebook or Google and have them put my messages in front of people and have a certain percent convert and have that be low friction. So the bad news for all of the software entrepreneurs who are probably listening is, if you want to make marketing any kind of competitive advantage, you're going to have to go and do sort of the grind, right? A little bit of the work. You're going to have to add to your schedule. Hey, let me go figure out some publications that my audience reads or watches or listens to. Let me try and build a relationship there. Let me try and see what the options are there. And it's really the long tail where the opportunities exist, right? So finding things like, oh, I can run a sponsored ad on Pocket, and a lot of people who buy software as a service subscriptions, Pocket, because it's integrated with their desktop or their browser and their phone, it shows them ads right in the stories that it shows them. And, oh, that might be a really good opportunity for me. Or, gosh, this publication reaches whatever it is, architects in Canada, which are the primary buyers of my CRM. And so, they listen to this Architect Sessions podcast, and I'm going to have to go figure out if I can maybe be a guest on there or pitch them on a sponsorship. It's those kinds of things where opportunities exist.
Yeah. So you're saying a lot less about competing for ad space, because that's becoming more and more expensive as Facebook and Google are very smart, and it's arguable about their motives and everything. They just the dollars are going to continue to go up and up and up to get the same clicks. And you're saying, look at all these other influencers, look at all these other people who've built audiences, look at the bloggers, the podcasters, the people on Twitter, right? Who already have an audience. How can you either, interact with them, be exposed to their audience? Maybe it is a paid thing. Maybe you are running an ad, or maybe it is an invite to get the money, right?
That's cool. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think one of the big pieces of advice that I have for folks, if your goal is to do this organically, right? And SparkToro has never bought an ad for the first 5 years of Moz's existence. We never paid for anything. I think maybe a conference booth in our early days, but that was pretty much it. And we did almost everything organically. So it was through content, through email, through SEO, through social media marketing, through comment marketing, through relationship building, through podcasts, through videos, right? You can just see this huge coverage of basically anything that you didn't pay for, we tried to participate in, right? Conferences and events, all that stuff. And it can be very successful to build a brand that way. It can scale nicely. It fits really well with sort of the software as a service subscription mindset, because in a SaaS play, usually most of the time you are looking for hundreds to thousands to maybe tens of thousands of customers, rather than hundreds of thousands and millions and tens of millions of customers. And because of that, you can afford to spend a significant amount more time building a deeper relationship on each platform. And so that can be successful. But there's three challenging parts of this: figuring out where your audience pays attention to, having some reason why the people who run that publication or podcast or website or whatever want to engage and interact with you, want to feature you, want to amplify your work. And then third, producing things that will do that. Those are all three challenging bits. And so, my advice for a lot of folks is to kind of find this intersection of three things, really. Like for early stage companies, which I know a lot of the folks listening are, don't try to do everything at once. Like, I don't know, Rob, if you've heard, what's his name? Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Like
Vaynerchuk,
speak about, yeah, right. Like he has this philosophy around, what do I want to call it? Be everywhere, right? Like you have to be in all the places and be doing this marketing in all of these places all the time. And what are you doing? You're not on TikTok and Snapchat and what? And I don't believe in that at all. I think that is terrible advice for most folks, and especially for software as a service entrepreneurs, especially in early stages. What I would urge you to do instead is to find one or two tactics that really work for you. Maybe you're a great blogger. Maybe you're a great podcaster. Maybe you're great on video. Maybe you are a good podcast guest. Maybe you're great at giving webinars. Perhaps you are terrific at Twitter, or you've got a great Facebook page. Maybe you are amazing at visual content. And so Instagram and Pinterest work really well for you. Whatever it is, right? Pick anything. One or two things that you have passion for, where you can create unique value that the market, no one else in the market is already creating, right? So unique from not just your competitors, but your competitors for the same attention in that space. And third, pick somewhere where your customers actually are. So maybe you love TikTok videos, but my friend, I have bad news. Most buyers of software are not yet on TikTok. So
right.
That's sort of my, three intersection of those three, that you'll find good opportunities there.
Right, and it seems, I mean, you've walked this walk in terms of, Whiteboard Fridays you used to do with Moz, right? I mean, that'd be a pretty good example of like creating content that people wanted to share and was, in the hands of it was educational content marketing. And you're doing it today with, I mean, you're still a pretty prolific blogger compared to most of us who, I used to be a blogger is what I tell people now, but like you're still publishing these really long form pieces. There's actually let me see if I can find the question about it on air, but it was basically, yeah, he was talking about your dirty little secrets to ranking #1 in Google, which was a great read. And do you find still that those? I mean, it must be working because I know you have to spend a lot of time to put those posts together. And
yeah, let's see. I would say it works in that it brings attention and awareness, right? But it is, if you think, I don't mind the funnel view of marketing, right? There's sort of people who are up here. They are not yet aware of you and what you do, right? And you're trying to make them aware of you and what you do first. And then you try and sort of sell them on the concept, and then you sell them on the product, and hopefully they subscribe and stay a customer. And a lot of that content marketing that I do on the blog is either stage 1 or stage 2, right? Moving people from, I don't know what SparkToro does, to, okay, I get what they are, or I haven't heard of them, to I've heard of them. And then some of it, a few pieces I've done a few blog posts about, like, hey, here's how to create a launch outreach list, right? So your startup is about to launch, or your new product's about to launch. Here's how to go make an outreach list. I'm going to use SparkToro as an example because it does a pretty darn good job, but there are other software pieces, right, that I point to that you could also use. So some of that is converting people from, awareness to, I know what the product does, and I might check that out. And I think that can work. You brought up Whiteboard Friday as well, Whiteboard Friday is an interesting example because it is episodic content. And I think that's probably, so is MicroConf, right, on air.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you do here, Rob, is essentially produce a piece of content that is consistently similar, not exactly the same, but consistently similar in its value proposition, consistently similar in the audience that you're trying to help, right? And if you enjoy one episode, right, if you're listening to this and you think, gosh, this is really valuable, I should check it out, you'll probably listen next week and the next week and the next week. You probably go back through the back catalog and listen to, other stuff that's been recorded. That episodic content, I think, is one of the most underinvested, high value tactics that you can play in. And it is super valuable because most folks give up very quickly and very early. They'll do like 6 to 10 episodes of their episodic content, and then they'll throw in the towel because they're not getting returns. And I can tell you honestly, right, I've written about this and talked about it. Whiteboard Friday, was the worst performing blog post every week on Moz for the first 2 years that it was out. It was the worst one. But it also, like, we could see sort of this, it was serendipitous, but I could feel as we were producing them and as we were making them that I was getting better at it, that it was getting easier and easier to make them, that more people were subscribing, right? It was still bad in 2 years, but better than it was when it started. And also that the connection between people who had seen me on video was far greater.
Yeah.
It was massively superior to what happened when someone just read a blog post. Like the amount of the degree of engagement was huge, and I was getting way more conference invites and all that kind of stuff too.
Right. I've seen the same thing because I was a blogger for 6 years, then started podcasting and was also not, didn't get much traction. It took a year to get like a tenth of the audience that I had on the blog, and it was super frustrating. But it's the exact same thing. Suddenly you're in their earbuds. It's episodic content every week, and people, they really build a relationship. And I think that comes to playing to your strengths a little bit too, right? It's like you're good on camera, like you can stand in front of a whiteboard and do it. Not everyone can do it. Were you good at the start? Are you about to tell how awful you were? Because really,
you can go watch them. You can go see episode 1 of Whiteboard Friday, and it's just it's bad, right? It's really it's a struggle to get through the 8 minutes or whatever it is that it takes to explain 301 redirects in video number 1. So yeah.
Oh, geez. Cool. Well, hey, we have like 4 or 5 listener questions, and I want to, part of being live is that it's awesome to have interaction from the users. So some of these will be kind of non sequiturs, but others tie into exactly what we were talking about. So first question is from Jocko. He runs Flight Path Finance, and he says, "Thanks for doing this, Rand." He says, Your The Dirty Secret to Ranking #1 in Google was an awesome read. I particularly enjoyed the part 3 about engagement. Do you have any examples of evergreen content that does this well?" The engagement piece, I think. Say a post that ranks well for a year or 2 after publication and results in high engagement by readers.
Yes. In fact, I have not just a few examples, but I think I have something like 160 examples. So wait a minute, 10x content examples. Let me see. I hopefully
remember that.
Yes.
I remember that
so
article.
If you search for 10x content examples, I have 119 of them. I updated the list recently to remove some. It says it hasn't been updated since 2018, but that's a lie. I updated it like last month. Let me see if I'll chat that URL to you, Rob, and then if you want to share it
right
now.
Yep, I'll post it in MicroConf.
Not all of these rank extraordinarily well, but most of them do quite well.
Awesome. So not just one example, Jocko, 119.
Yeah.
Rand always
I know you asked for one, but
but here you go. All right. A question from James Kennedy, he's a MicroConf speaker, and he runs, rubberstamp.io is what it used to be called, but it's a SaaS app for procurement. He says, how do you hire? It's a pretty broad question, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How do you hire a great marketer?
Oh yeah. That is truly a challenging question. My best advice here is to start with a contractor or an agency, right? Consultant or agency. Let them help you get up to speed and build a great practice. SparkToro, I am taking my own medicine here. Despite the fact that I'm a marketer, we have contracted with a CRO agency. We contracted with a product marketing agency, and I'm talking to folks about a content marketing agency to help us with content that's more lower, bottom of funnel stuff. So I am a huge believer in this. I am coming around to the belief that it's a big mistake to, as a SaaS company, hire a lot of things in-house, and that instead you should work with experts who see this a ton, until and unless you have very repetitive tasks that you need sort of done consistently all the time. So yeah, my advice would be to find a marketing agency. Depends on the kind of marketing you need to do, right? If it's, hey, we need to build a great paid practice, or hey, we're trying to build our organic, or we want to do content, we want to do SEO, we're trying to build episodic content, whatever it is. I will say this, I'm happy to offer my help on this front. If you want to email me, rand@sparktoro.com. I have connections to tons of marketing agencies, and I can ping some people and be like, hey, does anybody know, can you help whatever James with X problem?
Right.
Yeah, feel free to drop me a line.
That's super generous. Thank you. Yeah, James, I bet James will reach out. So hopefully, hopefully you can connect with him. Next question is about the Facebook boycott. It says, Rand, you mentioned the Facebook boycott. Can you explain more about what that is? I think that's a good question because I had heard of it like this morning, but I don't fully understand what's going on. So I'd love.
Oh, sure, yeah. So there's, I think it's over 1,000 companies now, including many of the Fortune 500. Disney just joined the boycott, which is crazy because for the last 2 or 3 months, Disney had been upping its spend massively on Facebook, but they just joined the boycott as well. It is the boycott is called Stop Hate for Profit, and it is basically a push from tons of companies of all kinds. A lot of traditional characters kicked it off. So Ben and Jerry's ice cream and Patagonia and folks like that. But big banks joined, like Wells Fargo joined. Wells Fargo is not a particularly progressive organization in any sense, but the concept, and tons of small businesses have joined, like small and medium businesses across the country too. And the concept behind it is basically, let's push Facebook to be a better web citizen, right? To, in particular, not amplify conspiracy theories, hate speech, to basically, there's a list of demands. I believe the list of demands includes things like not making exceptions for politician-led hate speech. So Donald Trump being a prime example, but a bunch of almost exclusively in the United States, at least, Republican members of Congress who've also and state representatives who've done this. So that is essentially what's driving it. I think there's also 2 other factors going on here. One, summer is a slow time for a lot of businesses, and so they feel like they can pull back, and it's a recession, so they're already thinking about pulling back on marketing, and this is kind of a nice dovetail excuse. The bad news is Mark Zuckerberg told, I don't know why he would do this, but like at a public meeting, he just has no concept of how people perceive him or the world around him. I think he's a little bit on the autism spectrum, which is I think is understandable. But the basically announced to the Facebook team was like, advertisers will be back. They have no choice but to use Facebook. Our reach is too strong. Like, we're too powerful. There's nothing they can do to us. We can ride this out. Right. So unfortunately, so far, the demands have not been met. Zuckerberg met with a bunch of civil rights leaders in late June. It went nowhere. They basically all came away from the meeting saying he barely paid lip service to us, and we're very disappointed.
Got it.
Go. I would encourage anyone who can to join the boycott. I think that it's not only a good thing to do for you, for sort of society as a whole, but I would encourage you also because you will then take those dollars and discover more creative places to use them. And that can build what you want, right? What you want as a software business is you want marketing to be a potential competitive advantage, like a way for you to stand out from your competition because you can acquire customers at a lower cost and you can acquire more of them. And if all you're doing is bidding against everybody else on Facebook ads, it's not really a competitive advantage, right?
Yep. Yeah, I know so few businesses that, especially, like bootstrapped or, ones that raise these smaller rounds, these kind of angel rounds. So few of them just go head into Google or Facebook and try to build it that way because you have to find these other avenues. You have to find, and you can, because you're not building $1 billion company. Maybe you're building a $10 or $20 million company. You can build that with smaller, side streams, which is exactly what you're saying. I actually think
even if long term you wanted to build $1 billion company, why in the world would you start with the most expensive, lowest ROI forms of advertising unless you're just flooded with venture dollars?
Right. right? And you have to get there to justify the growth. That dovetails us pretty nicely into this next question that's about SparkToro. And we didn't really intro what SparkToro is, so I'd love for you to do that. But the question is, it's from Paulina Masson from YouTube. She says, "Who is the target customer for SparkToro? I run a social media agency. Is SparkToro for me?" So maybe like a sentence or two about what it does, and then just help us understand.
Sure. So first off, SparkToro is free to try. Anybody can just go to the website and run some searches. But the idea is that you can instantly discover what your target audience or any target audience reads, listens to, watches, subscribes to, visits. Right. So if you say, oh, my audience is right, I'm trying to sell to chemical engineers in the UK. Tell me which podcast they listen to so I can go figure out, whether I should be a guest on those or whether I can do some advertising there. I am trying to reach, I'm creating software for writers. I want fiction authors in the US. Great. SparkToro can tell you what websites they visit and which YouTube channels they subscribe to and what social media accounts they follow and pay attention to and engage with, and what words and phrases they use in their bio. So you can do targeting of all kinds on ad platforms if you want, or hashtags that they use if you want to follow those and make connections through that. The idea is just, it is not complicated at all, right? It's just a giant database of social media and web profiles aggregated together that is searchable by anybody. And the target customer is a little bit challenging for us. That's actually been hard because I would say right now we're about 50% agencies, and then the other 50% is like a combination of founders and product people at companies and in-house marketers and VPs and CMOs who run marketing, a lot of individual content marketers. We have about maybe 170-ish paying customers right now. So it's very early. We launched literally 3 months ago today.
Congratulations, by the way.
Give it a spin.
Congratulations. I've been watching behind the scenes, getting your updates.
Yeah. You get the little investor updates, right, that I send, which, for folks who don't know, by the way, I have a lot of empathy for all of you because SparkToro launched, we did our first early access cohort in mid-February. And I think, Rob, you got the email, right? That was like, yep. Oh my God, I think you just made an incredible investment because Look at these numbers, right? We were getting like a 5%, 4.5% conversion rate from our first cohort. And then we sent to the rest of that cohort over the course of March. And the conversion rate during the pandemic dropped by 90%.
Yep. That's
there
tough.
You go.
It'll come back, but it makes a great story, right? It's like,
marketing is where people cut when there's a recession, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
It makes sense.
Totally. Cool. Well, thanks for bringing that in. I have a question about, I'm curious if you have thoughts on this, and if you don't, that's fine, but it's from Gezim. He runs Commerce Owl, and he said, what are some tips you can share when it comes to App Store optimization? He's namely concerned about Shopify App Store.
Okay.
But do you know specifics, or are there things that are more general across the board with App Store, with Apple App Store, WordPress plugin repo? I mean, there's all these app stores that are around.
Yeah. So the bad news is everyone has different works in a different way. Marketing on them is different. The Apple Store or iOS versus Android is pretty similar. Every other app store, right? WordPress is pretty different from the Chrome plugin store, app store, the Shopify app store, or HubSpot's platform, right? All those different ones. What I would say that tends to be shared is that building up some non-app store based marketing tends to work far better than inside the app store marketing, right? So basically, if you can drive people to your landing page on your website for your product that is in the Shopify app store, that tends to work better because then you can get more people adding your plugin or subscribing to your product, and that helps you generate the reviews and the attention and awareness that then drives, usually, I'm not exactly sure if how much Shopify uses this in their ranking algorithm right inside the App Store, but then that usually drives the metrics that mean you will rank highly in those app stores. So when people say like, oh, how do I get my Steam game to do really well on Steam? And I'm like, get it to do really well off Steam, right? This is the frustrating, ironic reality of how most of those operate.
Right. Cool. So we are at time now, but we have at least 4 or 5 more questions. Would you be willing to stick around for another 5, 6,
Let's
7
lightning
minutes?
round it. I love it.
Should we lightning round it? Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Beautiful.
Normally we cut it off, but there's just too much. There's too much coming at us. All right. So next one is, what are some good marketer communities? Oh, for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
Click the wrong thing in Slack. Sorry. What are some good marketer communities where one can find marketers discussing, their problems, is what they're specifically asking. But yeah, what communities do you know of? Because I know you started one yourself, years ago.
Yeah. So a lot of the marketing community is centered on Twitter. This is just where a ton of that communication and sharing happens. So that's actually not a bad place to go and find those folks. I also like, if you're looking for private communities, a guy named John, what is John's name? Coy Wolf.
I love, you're just like me. You don't actually remember everything. You just Google everything. That's exactly how I am.
I do Google everything. Yeah. What is my, it's super embarrassing. I had dinner with him right before the pandemic too.
I'm the same way.
Let's see. He started Raven Tools.
I remember
John
Raven
Henshaw.
Tools. Yep.
Yeah. So if you check out, here, I'll send it's Coy Wolf. Is it coywolf.news? Coywolf.community. And they've got like a members only forum. I joined it early on, and I get the weekly updates. It's really good. I also really like Jeff Sauer's community that he's been building, datadrivenyou.com. There's wonderful program, email newsletter that he's got there. Highly recommended. And probably that one's probably pretty broad too, which I like. A lot of them are kind of SEO centric or marketing centric. Yeah.
What was that one called? Data driven? Because I want to post
Data driven you, the letter u.com.
Yep.
Yeah,
Data driven you. Okay, cool.
datadrivenyou.com and
coywolf.community.
Coywolf.community. All right. Send me both of those.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah. Next question is from Etan Efrati, and he said he's an experienced marketer who's taken a lot of websites that are already, they have high domain authority, and he's taken them to the next level. But he's never done the 0 to 1 type of thing. And he said, what type of playbook could you suggest for new companies or websites just starting out? How long does it take before your content starts to compete with other high domain sites? And are backlinks still worth it? Just there's a lot of questions there, but yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I agree. I think 0 to 1 is very different from scaling something up, because you have to find those first few practices that work. So the way that I would think about this, Etan, is I would try and figure out, I wrote a blog post about this, but try and figure out what in your community or niche people write about and amplify and broadcast and share. And then take that stuff, right? Take the stuff that the people who have the ability to amplify things are sharing and talking about, stuff they care about, and make that central, or at least very close to what you're creating, right? So I remember in the early days of Zillow, right? They were talking about like, how do we build a real estate platform? And the way that they decided was, well, we need to find something that everybody cares about, that they want to amplify, that they're curious about, that they'll go check out, that reporters will write about, that news outlets will write about, that all the real estate agents will tell their clients about. What can we do? Oh, let's build a home value calculator. It's not really part of their business model at all, right? It's just a marketing hook. And the Zestimate, right, the real estate calculator part of Zillow became how they generated their first 10 million visitors a month. And so that finding that hook, whether that is oh, I create episodic educational content because my niche, people care a ton about education. Or I create a free tool. SparkToro had a ton of success with 2 free tools. One is our Spark Score, right, which like tells you, relatively speaking, how your social account does against everybody else's, and then fake followers, right, which everybody basically goes in and runs their own account and then plugs in Donald Trump to see how many fake followers he has. And that, yeah, those kinds of hooks can work really well. So that's where I'd urge you to start.
Excellent. Thank you. There's a question about LinkedIn. What are your thoughts on LinkedIn as a main channel for marketing for B2B SaaS? Is it better to focus on that or rather focus on content marketing where we will own the content? I'm presuming like he's saying on it, like his own website or a blog.
Yeah. So both, right? Use LinkedIn as a place to amplify the content you create. I have found it to be amazing, amazing. Let me tell you. So I'll give you a brief rundown of what I do on LinkedIn for SparkToro, which is basically every time I write a blog post, I publish kind of a teaser version of it with an image on LinkedIn. It tends to do really well on there. It tends to inspire a lot of comments. I go into the comments. I sort of build relationships with the people who are commenting there. I frequently go to my own feed and whatever, right? Just am a good, nice, kind person, reaching out to folks, commenting on their posts, offering empathy and support, trying to help people, and building relationships that way. And then I also use LinkedIn for promotional stuff, right? So like when SparkToro launched, when we have a new video about how something works in the tool, every week or 2, I'll show something off about our tool inside LinkedIn. And every time a customer signs up for SparkToro, paid customer, I go to LinkedIn, I look up their company, I try and find the person who signed up or the chief marketing officer or the director of marketing or whatever, and I send them a connection request. I'm like, hey, I saw y'all signed up for SparkToro. It's really great to have you. Let me know if I can be helpful here on LinkedIn too. I love that platform. I think it's fantastic, right? And I would urge you to do the same thing.
Awesome. Thank you. Great advice. Last question for today, as we are several minutes over. It's a question about SparkToro. It's from Phil Johnston, and he says, I'm doing content marketing aimed at developers looking to jump ship from Google Maps APIs. Is there a way that SparkToro could help there? And Rand, you could talk us through, or you could screen share. Either way.
I mean,
whatever.
This is a superb question. Why would we not screen share at this point? So I need to go share my screen, your entire Chrome, Koi Wolf community. Sure. Okay, we're gonna share this. We're gonna go to SparkToro. I hope I'm logged in. Logged in. Yes, I'm logged in. Good. Sharing this tab. Okay, so let's go find people who frequently talk about Google Maps API. I don't know if we're going to have a lot, but we'll find out. We do not. Let's go. Oh, whoops. I'm using these words in their profile. Nobody's going to use those words in their profile. So there's these different ways to search SparkToro, right? Frequently talks about, that's like the content of people's whatever shares and posts on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and all that. And then there's uses these words in their profile, which is just their bio, right? Or their job title or whatever. So yes, okay, we have a small group of people, 381 sources, that's not actually that bad, who frequently talked about the Google Maps API in the last 3 months. And here are people who reach them, right? So sources they're paying attention to, social media sources. A lot of these are Google centric, but certainly I think you could get some of these folks to potentially talk about you, amplify you. Yeah, Mossberg, Atwood, TensorFlow. So, okay, so here, right, let's say I wanted, I don't know, Ev, right, which I think is Ev Williams from Twitter, to amplify my stuff. 12% of the 381 profiles that have frequently talked about Google Maps API in the last 4 months follow or engage with Ev on one or more platforms. We could look at websites. It's very Google centric, but search engine land is probably a great place to get on, right? So I'd pitch the editors there for sure. I would try and get on Hacker News. I would try and get on Arxiv. I would try and get probably on Speaker Deck. Dev2, this is a great community for programmers, right? Yeah, these are all places I would go. I could pitch some of these podcasts. I'm not familiar with My First, My Last, My Everything, PR Expert. That's fascinating. I might try and get on her podcast. I wonder if she probably had some guests from there recently. But some of these are great podcasts to potentially pitch or sponsor, right? Podcast sponsorship, terrific. YouTube, same story. You're not going to get in the Google ones with a competitor to Google Maps API, probably. But you could certainly try some of these other ones, VentureBeat, the Search Engine Land one. And then you can go into audience insights and say like, oh, okay, a lot of these people are also talking about, Python, right? Let's see what the Python community follows, listens to, pays attention to. And this might not be perfect for your API, but could be right for others. So, okay, there's 40,000 people have used the hashtag Python on one or more social media platforms in the last 3 months, and here's what they follow and amplify. So conceivably, you could start to like build your list for outreach there. And I'm going to stop with the SparkToro ad.
Awesome. That's an amazing. No, that was great. That was a great answer. That was like the perfect answer to that question.
As fast as I can.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah. So thanks for taking the extra time to
hang out with Rob, us. We're going to have to do this again. I feel like we need to have our next conversation be around this whole, venture versus non-venture and alternative forms of funding and like what's coming up and where folks can go for that. How we can get more different kinds of founders, more different kinds of businesses, more diverse kinds of founders into this game, because I'd love to chat about that stuff too.
Yeah, love to do it, man. We'll make a note. Producer Xander, put him on the calendar.
It's on the list.
So,
it's on the list.
If folks want to keep up with you, obviously, I mean, you were generous enough to offer up your email earlier.
My email is rand@sparktoro.com, and I'm most active on Twitter, where I'm at randfish.
Yeah, randfish, and sparktoro.com if folks want to see what you're up to in terms of software, but also see your blog posts. That's where you're blogging these days. So, thanks again, man. Been great having you.
Yeah, great to be here.
All right. Next Wednesday, we are going to have founder spotlights from the MicroConf Connect community. We're going to be talking with Tony Chan from Cloud Forecast and Edwin Williams from ZenHammer to hear about what they are up to and what they're building. Thanks so much again to Rand for taking 40 minutes out of his day as a busy startup founder. Really appreciate that he's always willing to give back. So same time, same place next week, microconfonair.com. See ya.